Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to the Rantin Review Entertainment. It is that time. Yes, it is time to piss off a lot of people on the internet. This is my rankings of Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, since Wakanda Forever is now out in theaters and most people who are interested in seeing it have already seen it. We will go back and look at the 15 main properties from Phase 4, and that's a lot to talk about because, number one, Phase 1 and 2 combined didn't have this much. If you're not counting, of course, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Netflix shows, which really weren't part of the MCU. But, you know, the Phase 1 and Phase 2 had 12 films total. We've got 15 projects here in just one phase. So we're going to rank them all. And I'm going to say this, just on a note on that, is that, if anything, it's kind of let me think that they were better off having fewer properties and more quality properties. Again, the whole thing of quantity versus quality. We got a lot more quantity here, but the quality, not so much. And I'm not the only person that obviously who has said that. A lot of people from, you know, for various reasons have said that Phase 4 was strange. It was hard to kind of get a grasp on it, and people had their favorites and people had their least favorites. Now, for the sake of fairness and transparency, I am going to let you guys know, and some of you who follow some of my reviews on the channel before know how I'm ranking these shows. My tastes are more towards comic book style storytelling, which is what the MCU did, which is what I always loved about the MCU, especially phases 1 through 3. And things that I don't enjoy are politics. So you could probably get a guess now at where I'm going to be ranking a lot of these shows, because I really abhor politics being part of my entertainment, especially something like comic book storytelling. So let's get into it now, and we're going to start off with, at the bottom, number 15. You probably figured it out based on what I just said, She-Hulk. Outside of the Inhumans, She-Hulk is the only Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that wasn't even really part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but She-Hulk is one of the only projects that they have had that I started and just didn't finish. I stopped around episode 7. I gave it a shot. I kept trying to kind of see and like, all right, don't, you know, just see where they're going. Let's see where they're going. But I couldn't get into it. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's a lot to do with politics. I don't like politics. I don't care if it's left-wing or right-wing politics, progressive, liberal, conservative, whatever it is. I just do not like it in my entertainment, especially fantasy entertainment. Now, there's politics in every form of entertainment, and what I mean by that is when it's beat over your head, because some of the things that are in the MCU that I really like also have political overtones to it. But here in She-Hulk, not only were there beating you over the head social political overtones to it, but it was just kind of hypocritical in some phases. It's supposed to be a very pro-woman show, but yet we have characters who are, you know, airheaded, vapid women that I would have, if I saw certain characters, like the one that spells her name really weird, I don't remember her name right now, and a funny character, but a character who seems out of place in a show that's supposed to be women or should be taken seriously. But then this is a character that I would expect to see in something like Expendables as like some, you know, the side character. You know, this is what women, vapid women, are kind of like. And then let's not even talk about the twerking scene. And while I think the performance of the main actress was absolutely good for what she was doing, she's actually a really funny character that saved a lot of the shows that I did watch. The first 7 episodes was the fact that she has great comedic timing and she's a great actress. I did feel that a lot of the finger wagging and in particular the scene where she's complaining in 1 second that there are men trying to explain her area of expertise to her while she's in a scene telling the Hulk that she doesn't need to listen to him about how to be a Hulk. It's kind of, you know, and I thought that was going to be an irony thing that they were going to bring back, and apparently they didn't. It's little things like that. And I've heard, I didn't see the Daredevil stuff. I've heard from people and I've seen clips of it that seems yes, we all knew it's not going to be exactly like the Daredevil from Netflix, but I'm just hoping that in the future, when they do this Daredevil show that is going to be on Disney Plus, that they're not departing so far from the grittiness that is the reason we like the Charlie Cox Daredevil, we like the Vincent D'Onofrio Kingpin. They're not going to deviate too far from that. So She-Hulk, just from the fact that I just couldn't get through the series, is at number 15. Number 14, which was almost number 15, and I think if I had finished She-Hulk, this probably would have been number 15, but number 14 is Thor, Love and Thunder. What a total disaster this was. And I've seen some people who like this movie. I no. No. And once again, there are some really good elements in here. Christian Bale as the God Butcher or whatever he was called. He was, in the few scenes we saw him in when he was acting like a villain, was a very intriguing villain. I wanted to see more of this villain doing villainous things on the screen because of the performance of Christian Bale. This is a one shot for this villain. We're probably not going to see him again unless they do some multiverse stuff with him, but we didn't get to spend a lot of time with him. I would have rather spent more time with him than with Thor and having a love triangle between his hammer and his axe, and then lamenting over Jane Foster, who is, of course, the mighty Thor in this film. And again, it's a problem that was also with She-Hulk, is that she didn't need to learn anything either. She just got the powers and went along with them. The humor was not really funny. And then we came to find out afterwards all of these issues with the filming and the CGI and working people to death on this stuff. Taika Waititi, or whatever his name is, the director, did good in Ragnarok, added a new spin on Thor, which was good for Ragnarok, but in this one, it just was a mess. It felt like a mess. It felt like a parody of the MCU, which is also kind of going back to She-Hulk, another thing that I did not like. You're parodying the thing that you're making to the fan base that's watching it, that made this franchise exist in the first place, and you're just kind of poking your nose, thumbing your nose at it. So it seems kind of weird. Thor has regressed as a character. He's had the most solo movies of any other character in the MCU, and I feel like he's actually regressed back further than what he was in the first Thor movie as far as being an immature frat boy. And that was kind of the point of this, you feel, in some ways, even to the point where Chris Hemsworth has kind of low-key stated that he really doesn't want to return to this type of Thor or work with quote-unquote mad genius directors again, so take that for what you will. Number 13 is Ms. Marvel, a fangirl in the MCU, but again, it's back to social-political issues just being again and again and again, and whether or not I agree with the social political issues or not. And in this case, a lot of them I actually had an interest in seeing. But again, I feel at times that while I enjoy a lot of the stuff that was interesting about a lot of these cultural things they were talking about in the show, I did gotta go, I'm watching an MCU show. I'm watching a fantasy comic book show, and at times I feel like I'm watching the National Geographic channel about the history of India. So it's that kind of stuff that's it's just too much on the nose. I think if they had dialed it back and made it more subtle, as we'll see in some of the other shows that come up later, which I'll talk about, that it would have come off a lot better. Plus, again, more issues with the CGI in this one. I did like Kamala as the main protagonist. I think the character is good, and I think the actress really portrayed her well, and I'd like to see her in something else outside of this standalone show. I think the character would work better elsewhere. Then there's a lot of the social commentary stuff again that I wasn't really into. The overarching story wasn't all that interesting. Again, the most interesting thing in the story is Ms. Marvel herself. And again, when the Marvels come out, I think I'm probably going to enjoy that more, and her being in that as opposed to this. Number 12 is Werewolf by Night, which I almost skipped over and said, I'm not going to really watch this. But I did, and while the style is a little jarring, it actually is a very intriguing little concept that they did here as a one-off. And in fact, I might have ranked it a little bit higher if I had gone back and watched it again. But the first time viewing of it, I really was impressed with the visual style. I was impressed with the horror aspects, this kind of throwback 1950s, 60s, 70s kind of schlock style of horror that was intermingled with this fairly decent story about how monsters are treated, and this really weird corner of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I'm assuming is going to tie eventually into Blade whenever the Blade movie is made. But Werewolf by Night, not a terrible one, but since it's a short and we didn't get as far into the lore and into the world of this as I wanted to, because it left me wanting more, I am going to rank it a little bit lower. I would have liked to have seen him maybe expanded into something a little bit greater, but we'll see. I expect to see more of Werewolf by Night in the future in the MCU. Number 11 is Hawkeye. Hawkeye, I think Hawkeye always gets a bad rap, and even in the show they make allusions to he's like the least popular Avenger, and has been since the entire MCU started. But I liked Kate Bishop's introduction as a character. I did not feel this one, and this is what I'm talking about. In this one, there were some social issues brought in, but it wasn't beaten over your head. The comedy I felt was done well and paced out well. I did like the return to a street level kind of thing. The inclusion of Kingpin was interesting in this one. The inclusion of Echo, I did like to see her character, another strong character that I'm intrigued to learn a lot more about going forward as they do more series with this. Of course, Kate Bishop is probably going to be part of the Young Avengers that is coming up. If you notice, one of the things that Phase 4 is doing is setting up Young Avengers along with Miss Marvel and some other characters we'll be talking about as we go through the list. But Hawkeye got a bum rap, came out about a year ago around Christmas time. I don't think a lot of people gave it the due or the fair treatment that it should have gotten. It wasn't a great show, but it was an okay entry that I probably would go back and watch again. Black Widow. I really struggled with Black Widow. It was the first film that came out post-pandemic. It's a film that got delayed because of the pandemic. And plus, on top of that, it's a film that probably should have come out about 4 or 5 years ago, probably in the middle of Phase 2. And it really does feel like a Phase 2 movie when you watch it. It feels like Marvel had kind of regressed with the storytelling. Not to say that there's anything really wrong with that, but at this stage in 2021, when this movie, I think it was 2020 or 2021 when this movie came out as the first real official feature film in Phase 4, it kind of felt flat. It felt too late. We did get introduced to Yelena, who is the new Black Widow, taking over for her sister, or Lena, as one of my friends who is named Yelena says. It's Lena, not Yelena, but I'll leave that up to you guys. But Black Widow's a fun movie. It could have been, if it was like 20 minutes shorter, it'd probably be even better. There is a problem with Taskmaster. The way they use Taskmaster in this is almost Deadpool levels from the Wolverine Origins style. It's not quite that bad, but it's close. But Black Widow is okay. So now we're going to get into things that I actually liked almost all the way through. And one of them is going to be a surprise for a lot of people. Number 9 is the Eternals. I went into the Eternals at that point kind of being sour on MCU feature-length films. For me at that point in time, the Disney Plus shows were way better. Well, not way better, but they were better than the movies. And I was like, Eternals, I don't know. You got Angelina Jolie. Yeah, okay. Got some good actors in it, but this is like another group of people. They're not going to be able to be as funny as Guardians of the Galaxy, so they're not going to have that going for them as far as introducing an entire new group into the MCU. But I think the story that they told, even though it was a little bit slow and convoluted at times, at its core, it was a fun story. And the final battle wasn't the usual mega throw 1,000 CGI monsters at the screen thing, so I did kind of appreciate that more. There is some logical issues with the ending of the movie where you've got a giant celestial that comes out of the ocean from the middle of the planet, which even that would have killed everybody on the planet. But I guess it's Marvel logic, so it didn't, and it's still there. Those kind of plot issues aside, I did enjoy it. If you kind of look at it as its own little movie, it's a good movie on its own. But I am going to put it near the middle because it was, just for the simple fact, it was better than I expected. Some of the other ones that are further down on the list, I expected more and got far less. This one, I expected literally nothing and got a decent movie out of it. So, I mean, that's, again, this is my list. It's based off of my taste. So just for that, I'm putting it up here at number 9. Number 8 is one that is very controversial. It's Falcon and the Winter Soldier, one of the Disney Plus series. And this one, I've seen some people put this at the bottom of their list. I've seen people put it high on their list. I'm putting it here somewhere near the middle. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was the second Disney Plus show. It was originally supposed to be the first one that they came out with, but I did like kind of this return to the Captain America espionage, spy, military, kind of storytelling that they were doing here. This felt a lot more like the Winter Soldier Captain America movie and stuff like that. The characters of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, their chemistry is really good. I like the introduction of U.S. Agent into this. I think in particular episodes 3 and 4 really gripped me. The whole thing with Isaiah being the original being a black Captain America that was swept under the rug and hidden as a secret, as an allusion to the Tuskegee experiments. That is a very real life thing that happened in the U.S. military with black soldiers in the past. That was very intriguing to me. The payoff for it was a little ham-fisted. And that was kind of the thing with the finale. That's a lot of what goes on with a lot of finales in the MCU, but it was a little ham-fisted. But I do think that overall, I did enjoy Baron Zemo's introduction into this, his cameo, the Dora Milaje having their contribution to this, and Sam becoming Captain America and dealing with the social political issues, which, yes, were kind of beaten over your head a little bit, but in this case, it almost feels like it's appropriate because that is the premise of this story. It is a story about dealing with imperialism and what happens when you displace people and then move people around. And it is a storyline that touches on a real issue that's going on today and is raging today between people who want this one world, no nations, no countries, no borders, and then people who have national heritage and appreciate their national heritage and want to hold on to it. Race in America, different kind of class in America, how money is handled in the United States and in other countries. A lot of that stuff was brought up in this show. Sometimes, again, like I said, it's beaten over your head a little bit, and sometimes they do it subtly. It's an enjoyable series, but it definitely has its faults, which puts it near the middle of the pack. But this is also tied with my other number 8, and I couldn't really put one of these over the other one, which was Moon Knight, which I was looking forward to because I absolutely have loved Oscar Isaac and anything he's done since I saw him in Ex Machina, which is one of my all-time favorite films. But Oscar Isaac in the MCU, playing this character, playing multiple characters in this one, does such a great job of it. Episode 5 is the standout episode in this one. It was an amazing episode. Unfortunately, again, much like I mentioned with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the resolution to a lot of things that they had in the earlier episodes that kind of got me intrigued and wrapped up into the story kind of had a ham-fisted ending to it, so it knocks it down on the list. It could have been really great, but overall, Oscar Isaac's performance saves this, and I am an Oscar Isaac's fan or stan, however you want to call it. So that's probably coloring my ranking on this. But overall, the concept of a schizophrenic, multiple personality disorder superhero is just fascinating to me, and the way they executed it most of the time I thought was really good. In at number 7 is What If? And I've seen some people put What If at the bottom of their list, and I've seen other people go, a lot of people don't talk about What If. I think What If suffered from the fact that it was animated, and in the West, unlike, say, like in Japan, there is a sense amongst people that if something is animated, it instantly is for little children. So they just kind of turn their brains off to it, especially my generation and older ones. I think the younger generations don't have that bias as much as we did. Since I am an anime fan, and I've always liked anime since I was a kid, I've never had a problem seeing more mature themes in animated shorts, and sometimes they're better than the live action ones. And in this case, with What If, I would definitely say that. So if you don't have a hang up on these things, and you don't have a hang up on, just kind of wild, crazy storytelling, just going wherever with it, then What If is going to be absolutely amazing. And I like the fact that they did exactly what the title is. If we change just this one thing in the MCU lore that we know from the first 3 phases, what could have spun out of that? And they did that for the first several episodes of the Doctor Strange episode is absolutely phenomenal. Probably one of the most depressing episodes in all of the MCU. I like the Marvel Zombies one was pretty good. I like seeing T'Challa as Star-Lord. I thought that was really good. And then in the last couple episodes, they kind of combined it into a multiverse Avengers thing. With Captain Carter and even Killmonger and Ultron gaining the Infinity Stones, kind of dispatching Thanos in 5 seconds. I liked all of that stuff. I thought it was really good. It does have a few echoes to future things that would come in Phase 4, even though the Doctor Strange, we saw it here, a lot of people thought, well, it's a Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, but it wasn't. But I did like the way that they just this kind of weird horror anime aspect. That's right up my alley. It's horror, it's weird, it's animated, and it's got some really dark tones to it, and then it does combines all of it together in a grand finale, which was actually pretty awesome for an animated short. I loved What If. I thought it was one of the better Disney Plus shows. Again, depends on your likes and dislikes. So again, like I mentioned, some people have this at the bottom of their list, but for me, it's sitting pretty high. Another one I've seen a lot of people hate on, and I don't agree with it because this is my cup of tea, but Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I really enjoyed this because I like weird stuff. I like I've said at the beginning, I like paranormal adventures. I write urban fantasy. This is the kind of stuff I wanted to see in the first Doctor Strange. You had a lot more really crazy visuals. Sam Raimi coming into the MCU, adding his flair to it. We got Bruce Campbell's cameos in here, which kind of made some allusions to old Evil Dead stuff. There was a lot of Evil Dead references in here. Some people had a problem with Wanda's character being the villain in this one and some of the cameos. I like the cameos. I like Wanda being here. Wanda was probably one of the most intimidating villains, especially the scene where she's kind of stalking America Chavez and Doctor Strange through the tunnels, and she's coming after them. It was like, Wanda's scary as hell, but the ending seemed a little ham-fisted. But again, I don't think it's a betrayal of what we got from Wanda and elsewhere in Phase 4. I think it made sense for her to be dealing with grief in this way and for her to kind of go off the hinges. Although I do understand that some people said we already kind of saw that in WandaVision, so to see her go even further off the hinges in this one kind of defeated that a little bit, but they hinted at it in WandaVision anyway, so I didn't have, some of the problems I've seen people have with this movie, I didn't have. I enjoyed it. America Chavez is an interesting addition. Again, another young Avenger being introduced into the fray. And the ending and the post-credit scene definitely hints at some really even stranger things coming in the future for our favorite Doctor turned Sorcerer Supreme. Oh, I'm sorry, Wong is now the Sorcerer Supreme. Number 5 is Shang-Chi. And Shang-Chi, originally when I saw it, I was not a big fan of it. And a lot of people loved it. And I was like, I didn't see it. I went back and watched it again, and I was like, okay, maybe I was in a bad mood when I saw it in the theaters, but when I watched it the second time, I absolutely loved it. So Shang-Chi is up here high on my list. A good addition. I like the action sequences. I like some of the different ways in which they approach things here with the hero and his quote-unquote sidekick, who really isn't a sidekick. Their chemistry is really awesome. The villain in this one is actually a fleshed out villain, a thing that Marvel has tended to have problems with. We do fall into the trap again of having a CGI final battle with things flying all over the screen and everything else. It was kind of cool. The battle with the rings was cool. Their different take on what the rings were, instead of them being rings, being really bracelets actually, and how it ties into Miss Marvel a little bit, which we will learn later on when Miss Marvel came out. A lot of these things I did find to work well in this movie on a second viewing. So I originally would have put Shang-Chi probably in the lower half of this list, but again, after seeing it a second time, I actually liked it a lot more. Number 4 is Wakanda Forever, the sequel to Black Panther, one of the most successful Marvel movies of all time, a cultural touchstone for a lot of people. This movie, a lot of people were giving it because of the 3 properties that are at the bottom of my list that came up before it. There was this kind of fatigue in the MCU stuff. Yes, it is true that a lot of the characters in this movie were female characters, and some of it, there's some issues with it here and there. But honestly, my criteria for that is if you could have swapped the gender or sex, I should say, of the characters with male characters, or if you could have made all the characters white instead of black or Asian instead of black, would the movie have still worked? Yes, it would have. This movie was not about their ethnicity. It was not about their sex or their gender. It was not about any of that. It was about grieving and loss of a brother, loss of a son, loss of a leader, loss of a champion. That was what this movie was about. It was also about being kind of ostracized from the world as a culture, but having something of great value that the outside world wants, and trying to preserve it and trying to protect it from the less scrupulous ones of the outside world. I did think Angela Bassett, as many people have said, was absolutely phenomenal in this movie. an absolute standout. Letitia Wright was as Shuri. She did a phenomenal job. Yes, it is a little jarring to see her as small as she is going into battle with Namor. And there are some plot issues and some things that just don't make any logical sense. But then again, we're talking about Marvel where they have a giant head coming out of the center of the earth and everything is fine after that. So the logistical issues in this story, even though they are bothersome to anybody who thinks about it for more than 5 seconds, it's a superhero movie. So I gave it a little bit of a pass, although it will stick with you once you see it, if you do see it. But I thought this was a decent, I went into it, hearing a lot of negative rap about it, kind of going, I don't know. But halfway through it, I was like, I don't know what everybody's talking about. This is perfectly fine. This, not only is this fine, I'm actually enjoying it. I did not enjoy Riri Williams' character, though. I would have liked it if they had put Storm in this one from the X-Men, if they had introduced her in here instead of Riri Williams. But again, the point of this is to set up Young Avengers with Riri and Miss Marvel and Kate Bishop and all the other young characters, Love from Thor, Love and Thunder, and so on and so forth, and even Tommy from WandaVision. They're going to make the Young Avengers, so that's why Riri Williams was in here. But I think, narratively speaking, I would have liked to have seen Storm be introduced to this. And again, they reference Namor as a mutant, so we still have that mutant thing that they're hinting at a lot in Phase 4 for the eventual debut of the X-Men officially in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Number 3 is Loki. Loki's another controversial one. Some people like it, some people don't. I loved Loki. I remember watching it, fondly watching it, and waiting every week for the next episode to come out. Again, I like urban fantasy and paranormal stuff. This is weird and crazy, and Tom Hiddleston as Loki is always good. We get all kinds of different Lokis in this one. Sylvie is a great new character, although I would have liked to have seen her have a little bit more than one note to her character of just being revenge, revenge, revenge. We did get a little bit of that, but I would have liked to have seen her character with a little bit more dimensions to her. Owen Wilson, Owen Wilson almost steals the show in this one. He's really good in his role. And Renslayer, I think the way they set this up and the mystery in each episode unraveling a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more of the mystery, which I think some of the later Disney Plus MCU shows didn't do, that the earlier ones did. I think it worked to a T here in this one. And of course, the introduction of Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror in this one, He Who Remains, and kind of being probably the most important plot point in the entire Phase 4 for what's happening in the rest of the MCU as we're heading towards Secret Wars. I think that's going to be picked up a lot more in February when we get to Ant-Man and Quantumania, which Kang is definitely going to be a prominent centerpiece of that film. But this introduction to him and Jonathan Majors' portrayal here was absolutely fantastic, and the cliffhanger ending I liked. I can't wait for Loki Season 2. It is number 3 on my list of Phase 4 projects. Number 2 is WandaVision. WandaVision, it was the first MCU Phase 4 project that I saw when it came out. All right, I don't know about this Disney Plus thing. Let me go try it out. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe they're doing too much. And then WandaVision was a great thing to do as your debut Disney Plus show. The novelty and just the brilliance and the attention to detail that they did with taking Wanda and Vision through all of these different sitcom eras, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s to 2000s, through each episode, I thought worked extremely well. It is probably the best take on the comic book version of WandaVision, which is not like this. They used it and they just took the concept and they say, all right, cool, we can make each episode a different era and make it based off of sitcoms that Wanda would have watched. And again, the details of them recreating things like Bewitched and Family Ties and Malcolm in the Middle and The Office and so on and so forth, and putting it in the show was fantastic. I like Monica Rambeau's introduction. Again, another character I would have liked to seen a little bit more to her as a character. And we got Kat Denning back as Darcy, which I was shocked to see. I was like, Darcy's back? Why is Darcy in? I thought we just kind of moved Darcy off into the bin of forgotten characters in the MCU, but she was full on prominent in this one. Jimmy Woo is back in this one as well. I thought the cast did a wonderful job. Some great emotional scenes between Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen, especially as Vision starts to figure out what's going on. There's one episode in particular where Wanda rolls the credits and Vision's like, no, and they have this argument, and the performance was great. Then the shock of the X-Men, the Fox X-Men's version of Quicksilver, yes, Jeffrey Dahmer himself showing up in this show, and everybody flipping out about it because they're like, oh my God, they're doing the multiverse in the multiverse of the meta multiverse. It was the way that was just a brilliant stroke. It turned out to be kind of a limp boner of a reveal, but it was just a hint as to what's coming in the future. It was a great hint. Again, I love WandaVision. I think it is absolutely the best Disney Plus show that they've done. And as you can see, it being number 2 on my list, one of the best things they've done in Phase 4, and I would say in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. And number 1, which I think is one of the few things that everybody's list is probably going to have at number 1, is definitely number 1 on mine, is one that's not even done by Disney. It's, ironically enough, it's done by Sony. It is Spider-Man and No Way Home, getting all of the prior Spider-Mans in this movie, along with a lot of villains from the old Sony Spider-Man trilogy from Sam Raimi, the Amazing Spider-Man, a couple of films, and then just mashing it all up here was just a fun, wonderful ride. It was exciting entertainment. We got cameos from Wong and Doctor Strange. We got cameos from Matt Murdock. We got it's such a delightful, fun movie, and the storyline is, even though it's a little wonky in the middle, it is an enjoyable storyline and has a very emotional ending to it. And where we go further, I don't know, but this felt like a big time Marvel movie with all of the trimmings where the action is earned. And this is something I was going to talk about earlier, is that there are a lot of these properties that have the big fight with all the CGI stuff flying all over the screen. And sometimes when I think it stands out to a lot of us, it's because it isn't earned. I don't think it was earned in Black Widow. I think it was a little overcooked in Shang-Chi. But in Spider-Man No Way Home, the epicness of what the story was warranted having that big thing. I don't think Black Widow's story was epic in scope to have such a big, huge ending fight piece. It would have been better, in my personal opinion, to be more intimate. Same thing with Shang-Chi. I think if it was a more of an intimate battle between him and his father, it would have worked a little bit better for me instead of going, oh God. Because when I started going, how much longer is this CGI masturbation fest going on, then you kind of lost me. But yes, that's my number 1 of Phase 4's properties from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. One, ironically enough, not produced by Disney. It's Spider-Man No Way. I don't know what that says, but it's Spider-Man No Way Home. So just to recap the list, number 15 is She-Hulk, number 14 is Thor Love and Thunder, 13 is Miss Marvel, 12 is Werewolf by Night, 11 is Hawkeye, 10 is Black Widow, number 9 is The Eternals, and tied for number 8 is Falcon and the Winter Soldier along with Moon Knight, number 7 is the What If series, number 6 is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, number 5, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Number 4, Wakanda Forever, the new Black Panther movie. Number 3 is Loki. Number 2 is WandaVision. And number 1 is Spider-Man No Way Home. But I want to know what you guys think. What's your list? Where do you rank the Marvel Cinematic properties over Phase 4? And are you looking forward to Phase 5? Or are you kind of done with Marvel? Because I know a lot of people are kind of like, I'm over it. Or do you think some of the changes that they've made have been good changes? Or do you think that they've kind of ruined the mystique of the MCU? I will say that a lot of the fact that they did clearly steer towards some very on the nose political stuff, and at times seemed to be insulting the original MCU audience, it did put me off a little bit to some of the stuff that they were doing. But then again, some of the better stories did keep my attention, again, like Spider-Man and Loki. So I don't know if that stuff puts you guys off, but let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until next time, I will see you guys here for more news, rumors, and countdowns on the Rantin Review.